Into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Greg Shapiro, and let's queer up entertainment. Benito Skinner, overcompensating star, asked to not do straight roles? Who should? In a casting culture that's long excluded queer actors from telling their own stories and also recommended straight actors avoid playing queer characters, a new twist is unfolding, one that flips the script, and not in a good way. Benito Skinner, the multi-talented queer actor, comedian, and creator of Prime Video's Overcompensating, says he's been actively discouraged from even auditioning for straight roles. Talking to Attitude, he said, quote, "I've wanted to play a straight role, and people have asked not to see a tape. And I'm like, okay." So I think a lot of queer actors feel that way, like, we can't come into these spaces, or we could never do that, end quote. At 31, Skinner is no stranger to Hollywood's double standards. As conversations rage about whether straight actors should play gay roles, his experience raises a new and unsettling question. Should queer actors be boxed out of straight roles too? In the same interview, Skinner reflected on the depth that LGBTQ actors bring to queer characters, depth that can't be mimicked by someone who hasn't lived that reality. Still, he added, quote, "If there was more of a balance, I would feel like, of course, it's acting. You're telling stories. I think it's beautiful that a lot of people can tell these stories," end quote. For queer audiences, Skinner's words hit home. In a space where LGBTQ performers still fight to be cast in queer roles, being shut out of straight roles too is more than irony. It's injustice. So we ask, is it right to look at sexual orientation as a determinant of an actor playing the role? Well, I know that this is going to be very unpopular, my response, but here goes. While he's certainly hot, at 31, Benito Skinner would probably be as convincing playing a straight character as he is playing a college freshman in Overcompensating. So, acting.
Yeah, I do understand the point where there's not many queer roles, and then to have those queer roles played by straight people, I understand that. But to say that queer people can't play straight characters because we don't act, no, that's not.
We've been doing it for years.
We've been doing it forever.
Well, yeah, since prior to the 80s, anyone who was gay played straight roles because there were no gay roles.
And even was that Modern Family, isn't the gay couple isn't one of them straight?
Yes.
But it's the way that it's done, right? So there is a space created for a queer person, and they have it. And then the way that other character is played, it's not in a degrading way. It's not telling our stories in a way that isn't intended, right? And I think we've lost a lot of that. They usually play the trans women in this like terrible, embarrassing, manly way, right? Instead of the trans women we know who are all beautiful and not to use this problematic word, they're more passing, but we don't get to see that often in media because they pick the most manliest man to play that character, right? And now you're telling our stories in a way that's inauthentic, it's not true, it's not real, and that's harmful to our community. I think that's kind of the difference, but I don't think we see that. Like, how is he going to ruin a straight character? Like, what harm?
Right.
Well, if you're an actor, I don't see why you would want to limit yourself.
Right.
I couldn't ever.
And I know that there's another side of the coin, about being PC. Sometimes I've done some voluntary casting for some of the creative things I'm involved in, and we had a whole discussion on Indigenous people, and can we kind of tweak it a little bit? Do we have to go with an authentic Indigenous person, or can we get someone who looks Indigenous? And I can see sometimes that side of it.
Sure.
But at the same time, if you're talking about sexuality, that's something that I think, someone should have an opportunity to portray, whether they identify with that sexuality or not.
But it's acting. It's called acting.
But also, but in this story, it's not. I don't think it's necessarily talking about the sexuality of the character. I think it's talking about, can you as an actor, regardless of your private life, play this character?
Right.
And shock and behold, Hollywood is like, no. Because again, they only see black actors in one category, black women in another category, Latina women in a third category, gay men is
Yeah, they're still compartmentalized.
yeah, it's very the world is not that way anymore. I'm not saying that characters don't exist. I mean, not all of us grew up the butchest kids on the block.
Right.
But we grow up into men and we become men.
Yes.
Yeah,
You know?
you go look at the example I think of when I was growing up watching the Brady Bunch and Robert Reed.
Right.
You know,
Was the dad.
and when I found out he was gay, I was kind of thought, you know, he was such a positive role model. And while he said years later after he did that role, he hated playing that, and that was not his most challenging and most satisfying role, I felt that he was such a positive role model and convincing playing the role he did. It didn't matter that he was gay privately. He wasn't ready to come out. Our society was very different than it is today as we sit here. So.
By Dick Sargent on Bewitched.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, it's the
Marlon.
list is
Long.
so long. Yes.
Marlon Brando, James Dean,
Yeah.
Talma.
And then we had some at
Laurence Olivier.
Yes.
we had some folks who said that they weren't gay, but we all knew they were, and they were
Right.
accepted.
Yeah.
Paul Lenz,
Yeah.
Right.
Liberace. You know.
You know?
Yes.
Okay, well, that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.